Hey guys, it's the AK Geek here, and I'd figure I'd do a video like this ever since I got my RH10 here. It's something that's been kind of rolling back and forth in my mind for quite a long time. So some of you may remember I did a video a couple years ago, basically talking, and this is the title of the video: 545 by 39 is better than 762 by 39, just my opinion. And I will stand by my statements in that video. I do think overall, as a general purpose combat round, I do believe the 545 is superior, at least from my perspective. The benefits of the 545 outweigh the benefits and advantages you would get from using a 7.62 by 39 rifle. However, with that being said, what circumstances would there be to where you would be better off using a 7.62 39 chambered AK versus a 5.45 or a 5.56 AK? When I'm going throughout this video, you can view it in that sense that I'm comparing 7.62 by 39 to the high velocity 5.45 and 5.56. You can use it interchangeably because a lot of the advantages you get, not all, but a lot of the advantages you get with the 5.45 are also shared with the 5.56 over the 7.62 by 39. But if there is some discrepancies, I'll let you know there. So, brief history, real quick. 5.45 by 39, this cartridge right here, replaced 7.62 by 39, which is this cartridge right here. Essentially, as a result of Russian observations during the Vietnam War and the efficiency and effectiveness of the 5.56 millimeter round in combat in Vietnam. The advantages of those rounds were, unquestionable. They offered serious advantages over the 7.62 by 39 that the Russians seriously looked at and they said, we're going to be left behind if we don't adopt something at least similar. So that's where they got the whole development cycle of the 5.45 by 39. Now, what's interesting is by comparing, post World War II, this is kind of a U.S. versus Russian history kind of thing here. Post World War II, at least when we're talking about the first modern battle rifle that the U.S. adopted after the M1 Garand, was the M14. Now, I do agree with the statement that many people believe we should have adopted the FAL over the M14. I do definitely agree with that statement. However, when I say modern, I'm primarily speaking of a gun that is not fed through 8-round M-block clips, but one that is fed from a 20-round detachable box magazine, hands down superior to any clip-fed system. Okay, and so by that definition, it would be considered a modern battle rifle, right? Well, you saw the switch in the 60s from the 308 M14 or 7.62 by 51 NATO chambered M14 to the lightweight high velocity 5.56 millimeter round used in the M16. And pretty much almost overnight, it was all M16, chucked out the M14, wisely so for most purposes. And you saw the 7.62 NATO M14 used here and there. It was a very, very sparse rifle. It was only used for very, very, very specific operations. Its service life was very limited. Let's switch it over to the Russian side. The modern rifle that the Russians adopted post World War II was not the SKS, it was the AK, the AK-47. And, a true first generation assault rifle, milled receiver, firing a 30 caliber intermediate cartridge, much more effective than the SKS, much more effective than the SVT, and hands down, unquestionably more effective than the old M9130 bolt actions. A very modern combat rifle for the time. And then, as you know, as the years gone on in the late 50s, they adopted the stamped sheet metal receiver rifles, which is this right here called the AKM. This is a Romanian copy of the AKM. And that was the Russian battle rifle for many, many years post World War II. Then you have the 70s, where just like the United States, they started to phase out the 30 caliber, and then they started to phase in the high velocity 22 caliber. Now, unlike the US, where they basically shelved their 308 rifles and basically, designated them as a marksman rifle, anti-material rifle only, the Russians didn't exactly do that with the AKM. Yes, the AK-74 predominantly replaced it in service, as the frontline infantry weapon. However, what you do see with this is the AKM never truly left service in the great numbers as you would see with something like the M14. AKMs stayed around. 7.62 by 39 rifles stayed around for a long time, and still to this day. As of recently, we even see that the Russians have most recently adopted the AK-12 to eventually replace the AK-74M in service, even though that's going to take a long time because they have just so many millions of AK-74s just sitting in the barracks somewhere in stockpiles ready for wartime. But they, with the adoption of the AK-12 chairman of 5.45, they also adopted at the same time the AK-15, which is essentially the 7.62 by 39 version of the rifle. So the 7.62 by 39 AKs never left service, and they were still widely used all throughout. They may not have been the primary. Look, you could say it was a secondary rifle for the Russians, but it was used in far greater numbers than any 308 battle rifle was ever used post M16 era in the U.S. military. 7.62 guns have never gone away. They're not going to go away. They're going to stay in service for decades. And there are many countries, Lord knows the number of countries still using 7.62 by 39 as their standard. And there is a reason for that. In most countries these days, they're using, we consider, modern nations have predominantly switched over to the 22 caliber high velocity cartridge, but the 7.62 by 39 is never going away. Heck, we even saw, the French Special Police or whatever, they adopted a version of the CZ Bren in 7.62 by 39. So bottom line of this is the 7.62 by 39 must have some sort of significant advantage over these high velocity 22 caliber intermediate rifle rounds like the 5.56 or 5.45 for it to continue on in service to the degree that it has. Because remember, the 7.62 by 39 came out in the year 1943. That's saying something. So what are the main advantages that you would have in choosing a 7.62 by 39 rifle versus a 5.45 or 5.56? Well, predominantly what you're going to get here is you're going to get better performance against barriers of all kinds, and predominantly, depending on the round you're using, you're going to get superior stopping power. Okay, I'm putting air quotes around there because that's a very loaded term when arguing ballistics, and we'll get into a little bit of that here in a minute. But predominantly, what you're going to get with a 7.62 is you're going to get 30 caliber advantages. The advantage you're going to get with a 30 caliber cartridge. Now, this is not the same degree as something like a 308. It's not that level of power, but it's up there. The standard 5.56 and 5.45 cartridges, typically when it comes to energy output, they're putting out somewhere from about 1,000 to, let's say, 1,100 foot-pounds of energy, right, at the muzzle. Okay, that's an approximate. Okay, 7.62 by 39 can go anywhere from, let's say, 15 to 1,600 foot-pounds of energy. That's significant. That is significant, and its effect on barriers is especially noteworthy. There are plenty of tests out there to confirm this, that 7.62 by 39 is better at destroying cover and blowing through cover than any 5.56 or 5.45 out there. Now, I'm going to put a little bit of an asterisk by that because many people confuse barrier penetration with barrier destruction. Okay, because there have been many tests conducted to where I've seen whether or not you have 5.45 will penetrate better than 7.62, and then the other tests done where 7.62 penetrates better than 5.45, 5.56. It goes back and forth. Well, why is that? And I will say this, from the predominant number of tests, the majority of tests that you see, 7.62 will do better, but there are those rare occasions where 5.45 does better, for example, like the military arms tree test. Well, why is that? Well, if you look at it from an empirical testing point of view, there could be outside variables causing this, but one of the main things that you're seeing there is you're dealing with a smaller projectile here. It's got less surface drag when it's trying to punch through a target versus this. There's more drag, there's more resistance on a larger round versus smaller round, so it can squeeze through things better, kind of like a needle, right? But at the same time, I would say for the majority of tests, though, this is going to penetrate a little bit better, but it's a wash in some instances as far as being able to punch through the cover. Now, your ability to destroy the cover and eventually open that area up to send rounds flying in This is monumentally better, significantly better. These will plow through cinder blocks. Again, check any test you want on YouTube; they're out there. These guns and this cartridge will plow through cinder blocks like nothing. It's very, very effective. It doesn't take too many rounds, and you got 30 rounds of it to do that job. And one of the other things that aids in this is because it's a heavier cartridge, it's a more stable round. Now, there is some detriments to this, but when it comes to punching through barriers, the 5.45 and 5.56, especially 5.45, will tend to do this. They'll start yawing almost immediately when you start punching through barriers or light obstacles. 7.62, depending on the round you get, it's more likely to go on a straight trajectory straight all the way through. So, which is a good thing if you're shooting through cover, and especially if you're shooting through brush. Especially shooting through brush, because that's going to be, there have been many tests done on this. Very interestingly enough, Kalashnikov Concern, the company that makes AKs in Russia, recently did a test on this where they're kind of shooting through these kind of mock brushes, because I've even read stories from ex-Russian troops that served in the Soviet-Afghan war, and they told stories out in the desert trying to shoot at the Mujahideen through brush with a 5.45, and oftentimes they wouldn't be able to hit them. Now, I don't know these engagement ranges, but essentially what happened in those situations, they'd say, okay, hold on, let me go grab the AKM-S that's sitting in the back of the tank, fold it up, bring that baby out, it shoots right through the cover, drops the guy. Okay? So you have a different situation there. Now, I know when it comes to war stories, you have to take some things with a grain of salt, but there have been tests conducted, and high velocity rounds like the 5.45 and 7.62, 5.45 and 5.56, they will yaw and tumble when shooting through brush. So if you had to engage a target trying to shoot through brush, there is the slight chance that it may just deflect enough to either be a grazing wound or not hit the guy at all, especially if he's moving. That is a possibility, and that's something to consider. That's why a gun like this is beneficial, especially if you live in a heavily wooded environment or if you're a hunter, which carries on to another advantage of the 7.62 by 39 is you can use this can fit into a wild game application. Now, some people may mock at that, but hear me out. Ballistically, 7.62 by 39 is somewhat of a mild 30-30. You basically have a 123 grain bullet going at approximately 23 to 2400 feet per second, putting out very similar energy levels as a mild 30-30 hunting cartridge. And then which is good for any deer. Heck, you can hunt deer with AR-15s and with 5.56 or 5.45. It's plenty powerful enough for deer. And again, I'm not in this video. I'm not trying to diminish the effectiveness of the 5.45 ballistically in terms of its stopping power, but in terms of raw numbers, the 7.62 just packs more energy. It's just physics. You have a larger, heavier round going at a decent velocity. It's gonna hit harder. And heck, I'd even argue in this instance, I think people often talk about what's the best bear gun if you're in bear country, if you have to use a long arm, right? Because, let's be real, handguns, having to shoot at a bear with a handgun's a terrifying proposition. I don't care who you are. But people talk about it all the time. Would you use a shotgun slug or, double-aught buck, magnum rounds? What do you use? Call me crazy, but an AKM, either loaded with a good, hollow point, or heck, even full metal jacket would not be a bad idea in bear country. Why is that? Well, you got 30 rounds on tap compared to like a pump action, manually operated shotgun. Second of all, it's semi-automatic. Third, I got 30 rounds to throw down range. 4, the 7.62 round, especially in full metal jacket rounds, will punch deep. And when it comes to shooting things like a bear, you need to be able to punch deep to hit those vital organs. So there's that. And again, it's also, like I said, it's ballistically equivalent to a decent 30-30 round. And for those that would say I'm crazy and they're saying, well, the AKM is underpowered compared to a shotgun round, these are the same guys who are saying they'll take 10 millimeter as their bear gun. Anyways, that's beside the point there. So those are the primary advantages you're getting with a 7.62 round. You're getting 30 caliber advantages. Now, again, when I'm saying 30 caliber advantage, it's there. 30 cal light. It's not to the same degree as a 308, for instance, but those advantages are there. I did make mention of stopping power earlier, and I do want to make a point of this. Depending on which 7.62 round you get, 7.62 by 39, and I made a video about that a couple years ago, and I kind of disagree with some of my points I made, but regardless, most lead-based 7.62 by 39 rounds, modern production, mimic Yugoslavian M67 in the sense that the base is heavier than the point, and it's going to yaw at decent distances within tissue. Let's say about 2.5, 3 inches in, which is acceptable. The advantage you're getting with that over a 5.45 is you got a bigger round tumbling, dumping more energy. That's going to be better for immediate, incapacitation. Now, do I think that you're going to see that much of a difference on stopping a bad guy versus a 5.45? You be the judge on that. I don't really think you will, but that's just me. Because you shoot a guy dead center in the chest with a 5.45, I don't care who you are, that sucker's going down. Now, I do agree with you. I do agree with the statement of saying you need to put as many rounds into the target as possible to stop the threat, which that's across the board for any firearm. It doesn't matter what caliber you're shooting. But as an overall arching statement, 7.62, you're going to, as long as it's not the old steel core stuff, the M43 cartridge, that's has that mild steel core that's designed to really punch through things, because that will ice pick through things. That is for certain. But if you're getting a modern 7.62 39 round, which, let's be honest, most people do buy, you are getting that advantage of increased energy dump and a larger projectile, tumbling through a target, which for defense is a good thing. That is a good thing. And one advantage you do get with a 7.62 round is if in the hypothetical circumstance, let's say, where if a 5.45 fails to tumble, and then versus when a 7.62 round fails to tumble, what's going to do more damage? This one. Because you have 7.62 millimeter diameter versus 22 caliber. So there's that. So that's my little rant. Again, I will reinforce my statements said in that earlier video. I do believe 5.45 is a superior cartridge in the sense that it's more accurate. It's still an effective round terminally when it comes to striking soft tissue. It's got insanely low recoil. You carry a lot more ammunition for the same amount of weight. All those advantages are there, and you can apply a lot of these same attributes to the 5.56. However, there is serious application for 7.62. There is a need for a rifle like this, and that's why this cartridge is never going away. And that's not just due to the sheer numbers of AKMs that are in the world. That is because this round will continue to stay in service, and new rifles are chambered in it for the very reason that this round has serious advantages over these higher velocity 22 caliber intermediate assault rifle cartridges. Well, guys, this has been my rant. This is the AK Geek. I will catch you guys later. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know down in the comment section below. I'll catch you later.